Meeting is now being recorded, so I'll now take the sederant for this meeting of the Clydesdale Area Committee held on the 12th of October 2022. I can see that we have present Councillor Allison, Councillor Barker, Councillor Corbett, Councillor Gowland, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Horsham, Councillor Lambie, Councillor Lockhart, Councillor Logan, Councillor Marsh, Councillor McCallan, Councillor McClyman. Do we have Councillor Shearer in the meeting? No, Councillor Shearer. We also have various officers in attendance today. I'll hand back to yourself, Chair.
Thanks, Carol. I'd like to ask if there's any declaration of interest. Don't think we've got any hands. Councillor Marsh, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Item 6, D, Brehead Lunch and Leisure Club for the community grants, please.
Thanks, Julia. We'll note that and we'll deal with it at the time. Thank you. So we've got the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 till 6. They're submitted for approval.
Seconded.
Thanks, Ross. We have technical issues today. So anyway, we'll try and deal with them as best we can. So next we have the Common Good Update, pages 7 to 14. Lorraine O'Hagan will speak to this report. Thanks, Lorraine.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon. Starting on page 7 then, we have the second annual Common Good Update report presented to this committee, and it focuses on the Lanark and Biggar Common Good funds. So section 3 of your report sets out the background on what Common Good is, and it notes that there are 4 Common Good funds held within the South Lanarkshire Council area, of which 2, Lanark and Biggar, are obviously in the Clydesdale area. Section 3.3 notes that the Biggar Common Good holds cash only, while Lanark Common Good Fund holds both cash and assets. So in terms of the assets, we're just noting there that we employ a proactive approach to the maintenance of the properties in an attempt to reduce the risk of greater expenditure in the future. So we've got an annual budget of $15,000 delegated to the Director of Finance, with anything above that value being referred to Finance and Corporate Resources Committee for approval. Section 4 just gives you again, for your reference, the governance arrangements in place for the Common Good, and notes that they are administered by Finance Services, while Section 5 explains the role of elected members on the Finance and Corporate Committee, and in terms of approving spend, and also that will bring the relevant information on an annual basis to yourselves and the area committees. Section 6 relates to the Common Good accounts for 2021-22, which are included in Appendix 1 to the papers for your information. Table 1 in Section 6.2 shows that the balance invested in South Lanarkshire Council's loan fund is £191,000 for the Lanark Common Good and £24,000 for the Biggar Common Good. And these are the cash balances that are available for spending. Section 7 provides information on income and expenditure for the Lanark Common Good. So for 2021-22, Table 2 shows the rental income and the various items of expenditure, totalling £209,000 there for the spend for the year. For 22-23, Section 7.6 explains that of the £15,000 repairs and maintenance budget available to date, we've only spent, or only committed, sorry, £450 to the time of writing. Finally, Section 7.7 notes for Lanark there are no other committed projects out with repairs and maintenance at this point in the year. The Biggar Common Good is noted in Section 8 and again provides the same information in terms of income and expenditure, and we've only got an expenditure line there. We have no assets, so no property income there. And Section 8.3 just explains a bit about some spend that we did incur last year in terms of lighting units, and that's come forward and was approved by committee. And again, in terms of any other projects for the Biggar Common Good in the current year, there are no projects noted to date. Section 9 of the paper gives information on the consultation arrangements in place for the Common Good assets. So we have no current consultations on lease arrangements and no current consultations on change of use. But for your information, we've included from section 9.3 onwards details of the position in terms of the proposal to use the Scottish Government funding to create a Lanimer Shed and Rural Development Centre at Lanark Racecourse. And this is information as it stands at the moment. I've got nothing further in terms of that, and that was what was provided to the last Finance and Corporate Resources Committee. So if I can refer members back to the recommendations in section 2 and just ask that the contents of the note be, the report, be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lorraine. Do any members have any questions or comments to make? No questions or comments? We'll note the report.
That's seconded.
Thanks. If you want to leave now, Lorraine, feel free. Okay, thank you. We can move on to number 4, which is Education Resources Participatory Budget Pupil Equity Funding, pages 15 to 22. Laura Mitchell will speak to this report. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to provide Education Resources report, which we're asking you to note today. The first part of the report goes through a summary of the activity from last year, where we had year 1 of participatory budgeting within Education Resources. Education Resources have developed a video which highlights the good work that happened within Education Resources around 21-22 for participatory budgeting, and we felt it was important to share this with you this morning. So I'm going to put the video on to set the scene of what happened last year, and then that will lead into this year's report.
I'm Tony McDade. I'm the Director of Education for South Lanarkshire Council. The video that you're about to see is about our approach to participatory budgeting across all of our schools. Participatory budgeting is a council initiative to try to involve all of our community in the decisions that are important. Really importantly for us, that participatory budgeting activity has looked at pupil equity funding, the way in which we try to make sure that poverty and all of the aspects of poverty are looked at, and we try to look at how we can resource and spend money to support young people and their families from backgrounds of deprivation. This has been a great activity which we've managed to really engage our children and young people. They've given some brilliant ideas, they've been really engaged in that process. Also, really importantly as well, families have been involved in that process, been able to highlight things that mean something to them and the way in which we can spend some money. Schools were asked for a minimum of 5% of our pupil equity funding budget. Some schools have gone well beyond that. That really just is an example of how it has become important and how schools have really looked at it significantly. The video you'll hear from our pupils, you'll hear from our young people, you'll hear from our families, and you'll hear from our staff just about the difference that's made. I've been in a number of schools recently, spoken to a number of young people. Every single group I've spoken to has highlighted the work of participatory budgeting and some of the differences that's made to them. And I hope that that continues and it goes from success to success.
First of all, we were all called down to this group where we all put our thoughts and opinions onto a bit of paper, and they were then put on to Twitter for other people to vote, like pupils and parents and guardians, because it matters that everybody's voice is heard, not just ours, because yes, we are in this school, we are all going to be here, but there's other people's out there. They need to get their opinions across. So then it was voted, and yeah, they got their voices heard.
We worked with parents online to gather ideas to spend our money. Once we got their ideas, I went around the whole school and got the votes. Once we gathered the votes, we went around the infant department and counted their hands. Older pupils, staff and teachers all voted using a Google form.
So the school held a vote and there was 1,100 people contributed to the vote, and it was a combination between pupils, teachers and parents. It was nice to feel like you belonged to a part of the school and you had like a say in what's going on around you, like something that's going to affect me as a pupil. Like, it was nice to have a say in what's going to happen.
At half Merck, we chose to choose better sports equipment.
Now I can try sports on the school that I can't at home.
I was worried I might not be very good. I thought I would make a mess of it, but I finally built up my confidence up and decided to give it a go. I've been more confident to help in the house because I know I can do it, and I know how to use power tools now, and I developed all my skills, and I feel ready to start a job.
Pupil voice, there was a lot of conversation that's came from that. It's opened up the conversation, it's made it more transparent across the school, so everyone knows what participated budget is. There's a lot of buzz about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We set up a pupil group as well, which has been one of the huge successes, and testament to that success is the fact that when we're walking down the corridor, all three of us have had pupils coming up and asking, are we meeting this week? Have we got a meeting lined up? And that just sort of highlights the buzz that was created by handing over a bit of control to our pupils.
And we actually had a parental consultation group as well, so off of the back of the high voting, which was, I think, 249 parents voted, which was excellent. It's been by far the biggest involvement we've ever had from parents from a voting standpoint in the school.
Hello everybody, I hope you enjoyed a short video to budgeting and the success and engagement that it's brought within our schools within South Lanarkshire Council. It's been a really successful project, as you can see from some of these examples. So far we have had 10,000 parent votes in terms of what they would like done with some of the money, and 28,000 votes from children, which I think is a tremendous response. We've heard today of some examples, some of the examples of parents who had not previously engaged with school life and have now gone on to actually build on that and enhance their own life and development, as well as some really enthusiastic children and young people who have so much enjoyed being part of the process. So I'd like to say thank you so much to our schools for all the hard work in terms of making this process such a success, in building in the principles of collaboration and cooperation and engagement, and also to our young people and children who have engaged so well with this important process. And finally, I would like to say thank you to parents who have been involved in this. Your input has really made a difference to school life, to the life chances of our children who are the most disadvantaged. And we are hoping in the future that we continue this level of engagement for the benefit of all our children and young people within South Lanarkshire Council.
Hopefully that video, I know the sound maybe wasn't great for some people, hopefully the video's given you a real snapshot the activity that took place last session with over 41,000 stakeholders voting as part of the participatory budgeting process. Learning from the participatory budgeting activity in 21-22 has informed this year's process. PB training was updated for 22-23 to build on the successes and challenges from year one of implementation. PB Scotland requested a press release of South Lanarkshire Council's PB journey with schools, and this can be found on the PB Scotland website. There is a link to that on the report. It's also on the @SLC Equity Twitter feed. Lead officers presented South Lanarkshire's journey at the PB Scotland National Conference on the 28th of September, and there is also an article that was published in The View early in the academic year. Again, the link is in your report. Education Resources also submitted an award application to the International Observatory on Participatory Budgeting for the Best Practice Award for Citizen Participation. The evaluation process is currently underway, and we will hear shortly whether or not we've been successful to the next stage. We'll keep you updated with that. The equity team within South Lanarkshire have developed a new equity hub, which is an online one-stop shop to support schools tackle the equity agenda, to help and support them with their PEF spend, Pupil Equity Fund. There is a specific participatory budgeting section within there, which shares resources, good practice, both locally and nationally, and as links to the training and the recording and any professional reading for learners. And the Equity Hub will be launched in November at the Curriculum and Quality Improvement Service Conference. Moving on to this academic year for 22-23, before the summer holidays, head teachers were briefed on participatory budgeting and were informed that this will continue for a second year into year two. They were asked again to allocate a minimum of the 5% of their pupil equity funding, and encouraged where possible to put more than the 5% if possible. Schools were informed that the principles and practices of PB can be applied across their full PEF allocation, and you'll see shortly the allocations that schools have done for the Clydesdale area just a little bit later in the report. As I mentioned, we had a refreshed training which took place in August. Head teachers and participatory budgeting leads were briefed on the process and taken through a PowerPoint which outlined the expectations and timescales as well as the support available to them. It drew on the learning from last year and gave some good practice examples, some of which you will have seen in the video. Following this, head teachers were asked to identify the percentage of their PEF allocation that they would allocate to PB for 22-23, and this was submitted to us via the PEF profile of spend on the 31st of August. A PB Teams page continues to facilitate the sharing of good practice and gives live support to enable us to answer questions that schools have around participatory budgeting. So moving to the Clydesdale area in particular, schools within the Clydesdale area have allocated collectively £102,222.62 of their £1,435,165 of their PEF allocation to participatory budgeting for this year. So that equates to 7% for the Clydesdale area, so 2% more than the original ask, which is phenomenal. Appendix 1 in your pack, which is on page 17, gives a further breakdown of that for each of the learning communities. Appendix 2 summarises the percentages of the PEF allocation, which is on page 18. You see from that 74% of schools have allocated the minimum 5%, whilst 26% of schools allocated more than this. Within the Clydesdale area, 10 schools allocated a larger percentage of their PEF allocation for this year than they did last year, with only 3 schools in the area allocating less. Last year, schools received an additional 15% uplift from the Scottish Government towards their PEF allocation to support recovery post-COVID. This session, the PEF allocations are more in line with pre-uplift levels, and this, along with the increasing staff costs, have been contributory factors for the schools who have allocated less. We also have some schools in the Clydesdale area who were SAC schools, Scottish Attainment Challenge schools, and received extra funding on top of PEF, and they now no longer have this because it's now strategic equity funding which comes directly to the authority and goes out to all schools within South Lanarkshire. Appendix 3 shows a further school-by-school breakdown, and as we gather more information from schools, more information on what they are going to be spending that money on will be shared at future area committee meetings. Currently, our schools are sort of finalising the participatory budgeting process. Some schools have finished that and are just reported to us last Friday on the outcome of the participatory budgeting process. Some schools have asked for a slight extension this week, just due to different circumstances in their school, and the equity team are now gathering that information, and we will report further on what the outcome of the participatory budgeting process in each of our schools within Clydesdale at the next area committee meeting. I now take any further questions.
I'd like to thank you for your report, Laura. Very much appreciated. I don't know whether people at home could hear the presentation, the video. It certainly wasn't working very well in the chambers here, but there is a link within your papers if you didn't manage to catch the full presentation. Has anybody any questions or comments to make? I don't see anything. So, oh no, Eileen, thanks.
That's it. Thanks very much, Chair. I think it's just to say very well done. And one of the things that pleased me very much, obviously you just know your own sort of areas, but attending regularly Carluke High School, in fact I'm going there tonight, one of the things that we discussed and I had hoped for, and that's what happened, was that they had to reach out to everybody in the school, all the parents, all the pupils. Sometimes it's easy if you've got a group who are very interested and that makes your life easier, and that's exactly what they did. The hard work that went into it was really tremendous, and it gave us report backs and various different things. And I think one of the pupils actually did say how he thoroughly enjoyed, and he had his say and all the rest of it. So I think that is great. The only one thing, and I'm sure that this will not be the case, each school obviously knows what it needs and what it doesn't need. And I wouldn't like it to be like a wee league, oh, you spent 7 but you only spent 5. Because I hope it'll never be like that, or you did this or you did that. Again, as I say, each school is completely different. We work with 7 primary schools in my single ward, so not one of the schools will be, the same or will want to do the same. And that's the only thing. The hard work that went into it and the enthusiasm was absolutely fantastic from where I sat. And that's the only one wee bit. I wouldn't like to think we would ever sort of start wee leagues saying, well, you did this or you did that, because I'm not in favour of leagues for schools or anything. Each school's individual and should be allowed to be individual. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, and yes, we're incredibly proud of our schools, and Carluke High School is one of the schools that really embraced this. A lot of our schools, all our schools embraced it, but it's a particularly good example of the impact that it did have. They said that they engaged more stakeholders than they ever had before in any other consultation, so that is impact in itself. And this year I know that Carluke did, they see the real value in, and so have put 20% of their pupil equity funding to that. I do agree with you that we wouldn't want a sort of league table of who allocated what. That's why we're asking schools, it's the minimum of 5%, and if you are able to allocate more, that's great. Some of our schools get very small amounts of pupil equity funding, and a lot of that, by the time they take off their staffing costs that they take, they don't have a lot left, and so it's really maybe only what's left that goes towards the participatory budgeting. So we are aware of that, and we will be making sure that schools don't feel like that, because it is really about, no matter how big or small the budgets they put to this, it's the process and the fact that pupils are getting that voice and having that impact on our most disadvantaged learners. So thank you.
Thanks, Laura, for your presentation. I don't have any more questions or comments, so if you wish to leave, you're free to do so. Thanks very much. So we'll move on to number 5, which is update on household waste and recycling centre booking system and the Carluke pilot, which was pages 23 to 26, and I believe Kirsty Maguire is online.
Thank you, Chair. And good afternoon to everyone who's in attendance this afternoon. I'm here to provide an update on the booking system, which was introduced at Carluke Household Waste and Recycling Centre in February of this year. The report contains a number of sections. I'll just kind of talk through them. The first one, which is the background to the booking system, and reiterates what the main aims of the system were. Section 4 of the report, which contains the main evaluation data. So at 4.1, we see how many people had used, how many booking requests we had received for the service between February and August, and that's 27,000. We see what the breakdown of that is in terms of how many actually used the online self-service booking system and how many went through the contact centre. And that's at 96 to 4% split. So the booking system option was by far the most popular way of booking a slot at the site. There is a breakdown of the number of completed bookings, the number of no-shows, and the number of bookings that were cancelled by the resident before their slot. At 4.2, we have provided a breakdown of where the site users reside. You can see that Carluke is by far has the biggest share of people who use the site, which isn't surprising given the location of the CA site within Carluke. And then after that, it's Lanark. In terms of under 4.3, there's a couple of charts there at 4.3 which give a breakdown of when the sites are the most popular time to use the site and the most popular day to use the site. Members can see that Monday is the most popular day to use the site, followed by Sunday, and the most popular times to visit are between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, the least popular time being 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the evening during the summer months. At 4.5, I have set out a summary of the customer satisfaction surveys that we ask people who make a booking to complete. There is a breakdown between March, April, May, June and July, which was the last full month before the report was drafted and put in. And you can see that there is, in terms of booking system ease of use, the satisfaction rates are, the lowest was 85% in June, and we got up to 97% in March. Booking slots availability is also as high, so that's 95% of users were satisfied or above. But in terms of number of booking slots, personal experience is noted there as well. So it's 81% and above for personal experience. At 4.6, I've given a kind of a breakdown of the number and the type of complaints that we received. And as you can see, we've had 13 in total during that period. And at section 5 of the report, I've set out what the proposals and the next steps are. The proposals, the next steps being that we would like to consider to roll that out to the other civic community sites, household waste recycling sites that are located throughout South Lanarkshire, and that we'll look to go to the Community and Enterprise Committee for further details on that at some point in the close future. That's everything that I have. So if anyone has any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them.
Thanks, Kirsty. Thanks for your report. Really surprised to see how many people actually use the site, and the detail that you've given us is absolutely fine. I believe that everyone would be quite happy with that. Now I've got Alec Allison.
Couple of complaints to myself about it, and both of those were about people turning up at their allotted slot and not being able to dispose of their rubbish. That they'd had to wait a considerable time at the very least. Yet that doesn't seem to be reflected. Have you had no complaints about that?
We've had, we've had 13 complaints in total, sorry.
Yeah, I see that from the paper.
But
None
that's
of them.
sorry, can I ask when those were? Have these been quite recently? Or
No, a
because it
couple of
may
months
not have
ago.
been captured by the report, Councillor Allison, because the information's only up to the 4th of August. So,
oh well, it's round about that time.
So it may be that. If you want to provide any further information, I can certainly investigate the reasons why that happened.
I phoned in at the time.
Right, okay. We've generally, the reviews have generally been positive, I have to say. I have given kind of an outline of the types of complaints, and we have had, unhappy about staff questioning origin of waste, and we've had a number of issues about staff not helping, which was initially due to COVID. But I'm in the process of changing that because obviously COVID restrictions have dropped off. But I'm not aware of anything that's come through this system, come through to me about not being able to access the site at the booking time, but I will investigate that further.
Okay.
Thanks, Alec and Kirsty. You can take that offline, I suppose, Alec, if you need to. Now have David Shearer, thanks.
Thanks, Chair. For Kirsty, thanks for that report. Lots of information. What I will say, I'm still getting the occasional complaint that it's not as easy as it could be, or that the staff are as helpful as they could be. Yeah. But I suspect we will always tend to get that. My only concern, Kirsty, is that you're telling us that booking a slot through the computer is fine, and we've got the telephone system. As long as we keep as many lanes open so that somebody who's maybe elderly and is not au fait with a computer can still book a slot easily and with little hassle, then I think it'll be successful. If we make it difficult for people to use the facility, we're going to get fly tipping and we're going to get problems further down the line. So I would just hope that if it goes forward, that we keep all the lanes open and available for every member of society to be able to use the facility as easily as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no, I agree. Just so that to say that if any proposals that will go forward to community and enterprise resources will recognise that we have people who don't have access to the internet, we have elderly people who are not comfortable with it, so there will always be an option for them to use an alternative method to make a booking system. So we'll contain that, have that recommendation within our proposals.
Oh, hi. Sorry, we're having technical issues again.
Oh, sorry.
We want to just ignoring you. Thanks for that, Kirsty. We have Julia Marsh now, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you were on screen for some significant time there, Kirsty. I was wondering if you would sing a song. But I very much welcome this report. Certainly, from my point of view, the complaints about Carluke Amenity Site have dropped to zero effectively since the booking system has been introduced. I'm wondering, and apologies, I've scanned through the report again just to check I haven't missed it, but I'm wondering, prior to the booking system coming in, and I do know that the skips have changed as well, that the majority of the complaints coming into me were that the site had to close or were unable to accept certain types of rubbish at that point in time, and so people were having a wasted journey. I take it that the fact there's a booking system means that's been smoothed out as well, or is that still a particular issue?
Yeah. So there is still the odd thing that we can't plan for. For example, we did have our hook lift breakdown yesterday. So there is the odd thing, but it's an exception now rather than a rule, because the guys are much better able to plan because they can look to see who's due in at a certain time and they can plan their skip movements around that. A lot of the complaints, you're right, were about the fact that it was either a really long queue and people didn't want to wait in it, or by the time they got there, the skips needed to be emptied and so they were turned away. So it has definitely made a significant improvement for that. We'd get nowhere near the complaints that we were getting in previous years. So yeah, so it makes it easier for members of the public and it's easier for the guys to manage. So it's a positive.
Brilliant. This is certainly my experience in terms of complaints as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty and Julia. Have Alec Allison, you back in again?
Looking around a lot of other councils, there seems to be a divergence of opinion as to the benefit of the booking system. It seems to be working well in urban areas, but what I'm hearing from some of the rural communities is that there's a significant increase in fly tipping because of this. One, have we seen any increase in the fly tipping in Clydesdale? And two, how are you going to deal with that if you take this forward? Because it will be our area that is then hit with the fly tipping.
Yeah, so we have looked at the figures going back 3 years, so we're fly tipping. So if we look at the past 2 years, then and we compare the figures for the period from March until the end of July, then there is a reduction. It's around about 33% less reported fly tipping incidences for this year compared to the same period in 2020, 21 and 21, 22. Now, the reason why I didn't put that into report, Councillor Alison, is because I know that those figures were elevated in previous years because of COVID, and I didn't want anyone to think that I was trying to claim that the booking system had contributed to a reduction in fly tipping. When we go back to 2019-20, the figures are the same, so there's very little variance. So I think what I can say is that I have found no evidence to suggest that the booking system has led to an increase in fly tipping. And I'm confident to say that. I just wouldn't be particularly confident to say that it's led to a reduction because I don't think we're comparing like for like in the last few years.
Yeah, well, I think the rural areas and other councils have found a rise in fly tipping.
And
as a result, some of the councils have stopped taking bookings.
We before we put the system in, I did consult with the local authorities through the Waste Managers Network, and that was not the feedback that we received at the time. So the councils who had introduced the booking system reported that there was no link between fly tipping and the booking system going in. So I would be really interested in seeing the other information that suggests the contrary, and I'm happy to look at that and review that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alec and Kirsty. You're not getting away that easily, Kirsty. We now have Eileen Logan, thanks.
Thanks very much, Chair. I would assume that it must be difficult to compare like with like for any council in Scotland, given the 2.5 years where basically nothing was opened and people definitely were fly tipping. I do a lot of walking round about our town, and I would have thought, just from a personal observation, that it was just about the same. Just as you said, there was no increase and there was no I don't think any decrease, because it'll never go away, because the last one I saw and reported in, it had obviously been contractors that had just dumped whatever they were doing in somebody's house, and all the rubbish was just dumped up this wee back road. So we're never going to get rid of it. And I think this was brought in because queues and people getting angry and various things. But it was looking at the numbers of complaints. So I am assuming that at the very start, the social media was fully complaints and stuff, sorry. But I'm assuming that never then transpired to people actually then making a formal complaint.
Yeah,
because I mean, I was shocked when I saw, no shocked, but I was surprised when I saw 13 complaints given what had been on social media and various different stuff. And the other thing that I wanted to ask, on those complaints, have you taken them one by one and looked at how could I improve that? Because really, it's not like years ago when we'd all cowed down. It's now a nature reserve, and people just came and threw stuff in, and there was an old boy in a chair and a pipe and just said, throw it there or do this. And then that evolved from that to this, and it's evolving all the time. So it's really like a wee business now, and people, the operatives, have to be business-like as well and manage it in that sort of capacity. So are they getting training maybe as well to, if it's a way of life, it's a fact of life, we all get irate customers to deal with. So if they get somebody who's maybe a wee bit irate, that they don't sort of respond back to that. So are you dealing with that and training people with that? Because that also was, something that was coming over. But I'm assuming then that all the flurry that was in social media hasn't transpired to people physically putting a complaint in, because that's a low number compared to what I thought it was going to be. Thank you.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's a lower number than I thought it was going to be as well. We did have a lot of negative press when we started to advertise it at first, but we also got a lot of positive comments as well. But I think our complaints at the start were just people didn't want the inconvenience of using the booking system. And actually, when people started to use it, they realised that it was convenient. It did give them certainty of access, especially for residents that were travelling for a longer distance. And actually, when people have got used to it, they're very positive. And just to pick up, Councillor Logan, on your earlier comment, which I know was maybe about a bit of training on site, some of the complaints that we had maybe about staff attitudes at the site. I did speak to all the staff on the site, and we did do a kind of mini training event. And I've looked back at the result, the customer satisfaction surveys that we've received for September, and the customer satisfaction surveys, the most recent ones, are actually sitting up at 95 and 97% customer satisfaction. So I'm hoping that the message has gotten through, and that the additional training has helped the situation. So fingers crossed there. But no, I think a lot of it was, we know none of us like change particularly. So it can be difficult for people to take that on board when everything else is happening in their life. So, but it's been a lot more. It's been better received than we probably anticipated.
Thanks, Kirsty and Eileen, for your question. Just one other thing, Kirsty. Have you had many people up here that didn't know there was a booking system, and are you able to still take them, or do they just have to phone from their car if they've obviously got a phone? What's happening there?
We do, and the longer the system's in place, the less frequently that happens. So the staff have been told to help anyone to make a booking if there's bookings available. So that should be happening. I have specifically asked for that to be happening. There may not be availability, there may not be any slots, and unfortunately in those cases then residents are asked to come back at a time when there is a slot available.
Thanks, Kirsty. I was just thinking of the rural area again. You know, that's all right if you're maybe an East Kilbride or something, but if you're maybe coming from the likes of Dolphinton, for instance, or some in my area, Auckland, Greater Bracks, I would hate to think you'd travelled, well, must be about 20 miles at least, a 40-mile round trip, to be told, oh, sorry, there's a booking system now. Well, I didn't know there was, and you'll need to come back another day. I think there has to be a wee bit of give and take there if possible. I'm sure if the operatives could do that, that would be helpful for...
I can certainly... Sorry. I was just going to say, I can certainly speak to them and just remind them, but they should be making every effort they can to accommodate residents and help them with a booking.
Thanks, Kirsty. I don't see any more questions or comments. Thanks very much for your presentation. You're free to leave now. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Next year. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So we're moving on to the community grant applications, pages 27 to 32. Carol's going to speak to this, but I think what we'll do is we'll take everything bar the one for Julia that she's declared an interest. And then Julia, if you want to leave after we've dealt with those, and there's no urgent business, so if you want to just leave it at that, you can let me know what you think about that first. Thanks, if you don't mind.
Councillor Marsh want to come in?
That's absolutely fine, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is the regular report that we have for the approval of community grants. For this period, we have 11 community groups who have applied for various different applications. As you will see from the report, the grants previously allocated total 7,592. Grants recommended in this report are 3,765, which would leave committee with a balance of 14,393. Chair, I don't know if you want to talk through each individual application.
Yes, I think we should take it one by one, and if MD's got anything after each one, if you want to put your hand up, thanks, or whatever you do online, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the first application is A, which is Lanark Agricultural Discussion Society. Purpose of grant is an outing. Their estimated cost is 550. The total eligible that they have applied for is 300, and the recommendation is 300.
I don't see any objections to that or any comments, so we'll move on to B. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Chair. And B is Crawford John Heritage Venture Trust, who have applied for £310 for materials, administration and publicity costs. Grant eligible is £310 and the recommendation is 310.
Again, I don't see any questions, so we'll move on to C, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. C is the application from Crawford John and Elvin Foot WRI, and the purpose of the grant is an outing. Estimated cost is 365. Total eligible is 365, and the recommendation is £300.
I don't see any questions, so we'll leave D and we'll move on to E, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So E is KFM Tenants Group Carluke, who have applied for outing and entrance fees. The estimated cost is £1,090. The total eligible that they've applied for is 350, and the recommendation is 350.
David, do you...
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a question. KFM, what does that stand for? I think I heard Eileen saying Kirkton and Fleming Court. If that's the case, that's fine. Thank you.
I was going to say that's very helpful because their application doesn't specify any further. So,
It's a good job we've got Eileen, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll move on to F, which is Scottish Old People's Welfare.
F is Scottish Old People's Welfare Committee Douglas branch, who have applied for outing and entrance fees. Estimated cost is £650. Total eligible grant applied for is £350 and the recommendation is £350.
No questions or comments, so we'll move on to G, thanks.
Okay, and G is Cooter WRI, who have applied for an outing. Estimated cost £400. Total eligible applied for is £300 and the recommendation is £300.
No questions, so we'll move on to H, thanks.
Okay, so H is First Carstairs Girls Brigade, who have applied for outing and entrance fees. Their estimated cost is £1,480. Total eligible applied for is £1,000 and the recommendation is £350.
No questions, so we'll move on to I, thanks.
So I is Carmichael Babies and Toddlers. Purpose of grant is entrance fees. Estimated cost is £325 and recommendation is £325.
I don't see any questions, so we'll go on to J, thanks.
J is Crisford Hazelbank and District War Memorial Group, who have applied for start-up costs. Estimated cost £300. Eligible for grant is £300 and the recommendation is £300.
Don't see any questions, so we'll move on to K.
And K chair is Colburn Brass Band Family, who have applied for grant for materials. Estimated cost is £500. Total eligible grant applied for is £500 and the recommendation is £500.
Don't see any questions or comments, so I'll move the report apart from D.
And seconded.
Thanks. So we need to move on to D. So Julia, if you wouldn't mind going offline, and thanks very much for your attendance today.
She has now left.
So we're moving on to D. Carol, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So D is an application by Braehead Lunch and Leisure Club, who have applied for outing, entrance fees and equipment. Estimated cost of £380. Total eligible grant applied for £380 and the recommendation is £380, Chair.
I don't see any questions, so I would approve that recommendation.
Seconded.
Sorry, Councillor Lockhart.
Did briefly say Richard Elliott Lockhart had his hand up. If you're there, Richard, okay.
Yeah, just my sort of usual question really is this business of the grants is obviously still lagging behind. I see I think we've got 2 more grants left for this session and 14,000 to go, when we're averaging 3,000 or less per quarter. We're going to finish up with another surplus, really. Just making that point again.
Yeah, Richard, you're right. We've got 2 more. We'll have one probably in December and another one, or January maybe it is, and then another one at the end of the year. And obviously there's delegated powers after that for the chair up until the 31st of March. Yeah, we have got quite a balance there, so I would encourage anybody, if they know any groups that would would benefit from a grant, because we've also got the money left over from last year as well. So
Yeah.
quite happy to, I think we'll do what we can to highlight it to groups so that they're aware of the grants. There just doesn't seem to be as many as what there has been in the past. Maybe all the groups are now back working together again, due to COVID, I don't know. But we'll certainly do all we can. And this will be reported as well on social media, so perhaps people will see it there as well. But yeah, it's a good point, Richard. We do need to try and let the groups know that the money's there for them if they require it.
Okay, Chair, can I just come back? Only that we did talk about trying to widen the remit, if you like, of this group. And I don't know how far that's gone, whether it's gone anywhere at all. I don't know whether Carol knows if that's gone any further, but, we've had the same problem 3 years and we've talked about it for coming up for 3 years. And I would have thought the way forward seems to be, to me, to start to widen the remit of the group itself, of the area committee.
Well, Carol, do you want to explain what you've just said to me? Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. At the start of the new council term there, Councillor Lockhart, we did circulate area committee dates for all areas to all resources, obviously along with the terms of reference for the area committees. So they are aware of the dates of committees. They have been asked to put forward anything that they have that is suitable for area committee to consider. And we send out reminder emails before every committee to see what business they have for us.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
I also think, from having read the new partnership agreement that's been agreed now, there is a line in it about the area committees and to review them and see maybe further the remit of the area committee in the future, but that will be decided by the partnership agreement people. Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. I'll draw this meeting. Oh, sorry.
Any urgent business?
Oh, any urgent business? No, nothing. I'd like to thank you all for attending today, and I'll draw this meeting to a close. Thank you.